seems to indicate at a glance, when you take it on a global level, because obviously various different categories with different findings, but on a global level it suggests at a glance that the PM has not substantively improved its position with the electorate since the election in March 2013. I'd like to ask you, let us kick this off by asking you how you account for this situation.
Well, very simply, I would say that if I had to be led by surveys, including negative surveys, then I would not be here in the first place, because my starting point is no. It was the most difficult starting point for any leader of the Nationalist Party, or for any leader of any party in this country post-independence, for that matter. So I do not allow myself to be led or influenced by surveys. I am here to do a job, and that job is to rebuild and regenerate the Nationalist Party and turn it into a credible and viable alternative to government. Anything along the way, including obstacles such as negative surveys, are not there to influence me, and I will not allow myself to be derailed from my overriding objective.
Okay, but the overriding objective you just mentioned is rebuilding and regenerating the party. Now, you may wish to disregard the survey, but what the survey is suggesting is that the party has not in fact been regenerated, because regeneration would suggest that it's substantially different. Give me a few examples.
I do not say that I disregard it, far from it. I pay very clear attention, very close attention to it. What I said is that I do not let it deter me. That is very different.
Okay.
You also start seeing certain things that are changing. For instance, from a high of almost 60% in terms of popularity, Joseph Muscat has gone down by 16 points to 44%. I would say that is significant in just under 2 years. As to me, I started from 25%, and I have slowly but steadily increased to 29%. So things are moving when you look very, very closely. Certainly, as I said initially, I will not allow the surveys to influence me or to get me to give up, if you forward,
People might out there, and I think our survey indicates this, it's obviously a question of interpretation and opinion, this seems to reflect precisely the impression, the perception out there that the party hasn't changed because the people practically are still the same. Much more importantly, if you don't mind me asking two questions at once, much more importantly, the policies haven't changed. We haven't seen...
Shall we take them one by one?
Okay.
So let's start with me first.
Okay.
Using your argument and taking it to its logical conclusions by the same token, I should think that Joseph Muscat was much more closely associated with Alfred Sant and his anti-EU bandwagon, was wrongly and soundly defeated 10 years ago. And yet, he came back and made the biggest electoral victory in our post-independence history. So I wouldn't write anyone off so easily. As to me, I'm much newer in the National Parliament than Joseph Muscat himself. I've been in the National Parliament for less than 2 years. And of course, I was associated with the previous Nationalist Party under Lawrence Bonzi. I was an MEP for 9 years. I was and am part of this party, and I'm proud of it. But being written off for having been the deputy leader of this party during the electoral campaign and putting it as if I was to blame for the defeat, I think is taking things a little bit too far.
You were the front face, the person who fronted the campaign.
Yes.
I'm not saying
But if you wish to conclude that the defeat was attributable to me, that's for you, that's your conclusion to make.
That's not what
I would give a different...
You're twisting my question. What I asked was, it's not that you were responsible for all the reasons that led to the defeat, but you were still rejected as the person presenting the campaign.
In the same manner as Joseph Muscat was rejected in 2003 in the EU referendum and in 2004 in the election, in the same manner. And yet he came back to make the most, to grab the largest electoral victory that the Labour Party, that any party achieved post-independence.
You're pinpointing the difference between the two examples. Joseph Muscat came back, and I'm not interviewing Joseph Muscat, to be honest. I mean, Joseph Muscat came
You
back.
are not
with a
interviewing,
difference,
yes,
with
but
a
he's the
difference.
leader of the other mainstream
Yes,
party.
but you mentioned that he was associated with Alfred Sund's anti-EU platform, but he did not present the same platform.
I'm sorry?
Well, the Labour Party changed its policy on EU.
Has it? Has Joseph
It's not-
Muscat
it's not-
ever said
it's not-
that
it's not
he was wrong
advocating- it's
on
not
EU membership?
advocating partnership, is it?
Has he ever said he was wrong on EU membership?
Like I said, I wasn't interviewing Joseph Muscat, but...
Well, you are interviewing me,
Exactly.
and I'm answering your
So,
questions.
Well, I don't know. What was it to Joseph Muscat when I interviewed him and asked him?
Well, I can give you the reply. He has never done so.
You've just come out with your position on the referendum. It is indistinguishable from the position of Conzi before you, which was in favour of spring derogation, unsurprisingly, because you were part of the team that negotiated it. Indistinguishable from Felix Anami's policy, which was in favour of spring derogation, and strangely and most ironic of all, it's indistinguishable from the Labour governments, which is also in favour of a spring derogation. So
The question?
the question is, in what way have you changed your policies from the previous...
Okay, let me give you the answer. First of all, you are not correct that we did not change the position. The position of our party on hunting is different from how you put it.
Okay, how is it?
The party has said very clearly that it will give full liberty, full freedom to the people to vote without being influenced by a position in favour or against by the Nationalist Party. We said we will not be taking a position in favour or against, but allowing people full freedom to vote in the manner they wish without influencing unduly. So that position is completely different from the way you've put it. As to, please allow me to finish the reply. President, please allow me to finish the reply. You ask a question and I reply to the question. Now, as to my personal position, I explained why I will vote in favour of the derogation, because I was myself involved in the negotiating team that obtained it. What you have here is a change of position from Joseph Muscat, if anything, because if after he spent years telling hunters that no derogation was achieved, he is now making a full U-turn and voting in favour of the derogation that we negotiated and that we defended in the European Court of Justice. So I stress, my position is based on my personal experience on this derogation. It is taken because consistency dictates that I stick to the word that I gave to the people, including hunters.
In the last couple of days, you went on record stating that the latest revelations on the oil scandal, of the oil procurement corruption probe, we'll be talking about the last couple of years, you described this as a smokescreen to deflect attention from the fuel price, which you've already mentioned. Do you stand by that? Do you think this is just done deliberately to deflect attention from the current fuel price? And a couple of addendums to that question. One,
Shall we take it one by one?
well, it will make more sense when you let me ask the question first, because we are talking about the corruption incidents which these revelations I mentioned suggest a widespread culture of exchanges of gifts in return for special favours. We were talking about direct bribes paid for oil tendering contracts. We were also talking about a culture of giving gifts to the CEO of Water, giving gifts. Here you suddenly seem to be minimising the seriousness of this issue by suggesting that this was brought up merely to distract us.
That is entirely your conclusion, and it is wrong. It is entirely your conclusion. So what's the question? What is the question?
Are you minimising the corruption scandal?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Far from it. My answer is I am not minimising anything at all. What I said is this. People are interested mostly in the high petrol and diesel prices that they are paying today, more than things that happened in the past. That is what I said. As to what happened in the past, let me remind you that the only people who were arraigned after this oil procurement scandal were arraigned in February 2013 under a PN administration. No other person has been arraigned on this case under a Labour government for 2 whole years. Not only, but recently we learned through Inspector Angelo Gaffar that the brothers of George Farrugia had to be arraigned as well, but were not arraigned for some reason under this Labour government. And guess what? Their lawyer was the former minister Manuel Malia. Now you tell me who is in denial on corruption. Let me make it clear to you that I have 0 tolerance for corruption. I had, I have, and I will continue to have. On the other hand, our current Prime Minister has 100% tolerance for corruption because he pays lip service to the fight against corruption, but when the first case came to him on corruption, and here I refer to the tempering of smart meters, what did he do? He gave an amnesty to people who bribed any Malta officials after having tempered their meters. So my position is very clear. Of course I am not in denial. Of course I do not discard what happened. On the contrary, I think that justice should run its course, and all the people involved in it who deserve to be arraigned should be arraigned. That is exactly what we did when we were in government, and we did not try to cover anything up.
How do you account for the presidential pardon then? Because part of the reason nobody's been arraigned in the last 2 years is because the presidential pardon was given to the main suspect, so he wasn't arraigned. And on the condition, as presidential pardon is said to be given, that he would reveal names of other people so that they could, and he revealed nothing. So isn't it also partly because of the decision to grant the presidential pardon that nobody was arraigned?
No, it's not. You are distorting the very scope of the presidential pardon. The pardon was given on the advice of the then police commissioner and of the Attorney General, who remains the Attorney General today. It was also agreed with by the current police commissioner, Michael Kassar. So this was not something that was brought out. Please, let me reply to you. That presidential pardon was given on the recommendation of the people at the time in charge, the Attorney General and the police commissioner. That led to information. Now, if there is something that is not true from what this person said, there was a condition, as you know, in that presidential pardon, that it was conditional on the truth being revealed. It is for the current government to decide whether the conditions of the presidential pardon were actually breached or not. But for you to say that people were not arraigned because of the presidential pardon is sheer distortion. Because people, in fact, were arraigned, and the only people who were arraigned under a PN administration in February 2030.
Do you think it is possible to win the next election?
I believe that there is a greater goal than winning the election, and that is unleashing the potential of this beautiful country and its resourceful people. Winning the election is secondary to that. If people feel that the alternative being presented by the Nationalist Party is a credible and viable alternative to achieving that for the country. This is why I want to rebuild and regenerate the Nationalist Party. This is why I want to change the Nationalist Party, organizationally, financially, from a media point of view, but also from a policy point of view, yes. This is also why I made the reshuffle in the Nationalist Party, to present a newer team to the people. This is what I am trying to do in this party. Will I win the election with this? That is for the people to decide. But ultimately, my main goal in politics is to try and unleash the potential of this country and its people.
You have adopted a bit of a combative, politically aggressive stance as opposition leader, even you didn't mean that a day ago. But anyway, do you think that is what the electorate wants out there? Or do you think that perhaps there was expectation of a less confrontational, of the more, because our politics is traditionally confrontational, And you seem to be fitting into the traditional role, which is unexpected. Some of us expected you to be less, to have a different style. Do you think this is helping you, or do you think it's hindering you?
Well, I like your demeanour too. Thank you for the compliment. As to the question, I think it was a very difficult year for the Nationalist Party, actually. Let me remind you that we lost heavily the election of the European Parliament. Although for the first time we elected 3 MEPs, and I'm very proud of that, but I'm conscious of the fact that electorally it was still a very difficult result from us. And this explains why we had to go back to the drawing board and come out with new ideas of how to deeply rebuild and change in the Nationalist Party. And we started rolling out ideas and our initiatives from September, immediately after summer. So you had the election of the European Parliament end May. In summer we went back to the drawing board, and since September we have been coming out with new initiatives to take the party forward. So rather than talk about the Labour Party, I prefer to talk about my party. And in this regard, we have taken a lot of initiatives to show that we are changing the party. So new director of information, new CEO, new head of news, you name it, new policy fora, a new general convention.
Okay,
when it comes to the stance vis-à-vis the government, I have been aggressive when I needed to be aggressive. And I believe that I needed to be aggressive on the scandalous behavior of Manuel Marina in the face of that incident, of that shooting incident. But likewise, I'm sure you are aware that my demeanour was extremely cooperative on other issues, such as the vote, a first, in favour, such as the vote, which was a first, in favour of the President of the Republic, such as the vote in favour of the Commissioner for the European Commission, the member of the European Commission from Malta, such as the vote in favour of more than 90% of the bills adopted in our Parliament. So I think when it comes to demeanour, I believe that I have to agree with